3, 2.
Welcome into Leathebrainz, episode 164. Gosh dang it, we made it, boys, and you guys are looking hella good. We made it to the Super Bowl episode. The Super Bowl has come and gone, and today we are going to be giving a recap of our thoughts, our opinions on the Super Bowl, the commercials, the halftime show, everything included. And then after that, we have an award ceremony. So all you Brainiacs out there on Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it these days, we put a poll out there. And we wanted all of you to vote on a plethora of different awards. And you guys did. Thank you. We have a full crew here today. We have Scotty, Alan Casanova Castro, and Big Yeti himself. We have the full crew. You guys, like I said, are looking really nice for this award show, and I am very excited to get this show on the road. So let's start off with the Super Bowl recap, boys. Alan and Scotty, congratulations. As Chiefs fans, you guys got another Super Bowl victory. Take it away.
How do you want to do this, Scotty? Do you want to go first? Do you want to just vibe off each other? Do you want to do a rant? Like, what's the best way we could handle this right now?
Let's just vibe. I think I'm in my best state after you gas up our team for a while. So maybe gas us up, and then I'll get in the flow. We'll jump right in.
Yeah. I'm more than happy to gas us up. I think I've said this previously in some of the past episodes we've done. You go to where this team was Christmas. Shout out Yeti. The Raiders came into Kansas City. I mean, it was a very convincing win. Like, the Chiefs couldn't get a lot of things moving, couldn't do a lot of things. And what I thought was interesting last night, if you watched any of the post-game on Andy Reid's comments on like where this team really turned it around, because it was bleak for quite some time. And he even called out Antonio Pierce. He called out the Raiders and said, hey, I texted them this week, one, to tell them how cool their facilities were, which I saw some of the Super Bowl footage of like just where the Raiders work out. Because I mean, obviously I don't pay attention too much to the Raiders, shocker. But I thought it was really cool that Andy Reid went out of his way to, one, give Antonio Pierce credit for like what he did for that team, for his own team, and then where he gave credit to where this team turned around. I think of all of the Super Bowls up to this point that the Chiefs were in, this was one of the most improbable, I feel like, that the Chiefs got to. If you look at some of the metrics and statistics about how they even got to this point, like this was one of the hardest roads to get to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl that any NFL team has ever had. The Chiefs had Tua and Tyreek Hill. I know it was cold, but they had Tua and Tyreek Hill, statistically one of the highest scoring offenses. You had the Buffalo Bills, one of the highest scoring offenses. You had Baltimore, the highest scoring offense, and then you get the 49ers, who are like as balanced as it can have, as balanced a team as you can have, with all pros everywhere. And somehow it did not matter at all. None of it freaking mattered. Mahomes showed up, the team showed up, Andy Reid was there. They still hit on some of the keyest parts of the game you could have. They had the head coach, they had the quarterback, they had shutdown corners, and they just made it work. And I think for this team, it was quite incredible. And my takeaway from this whole thing was the stats that come after the Super Bowl or come after these big games are they're freaking amazing. Right now, we'll start with Pat, and then I'm going to hand it over to you, Scotty. I'm just going to give you some Pat statistics. They're kind of interesting to chew on, but then I'll hand it over to you. All-time playoff wins for a quarterback. Mahomes is now third all by himself, only behind Tom Brady and Joe Montana, ahead of people like Terry Bradshaw, John Elway, Peyton Manning, Steve Young. Mind you, this is only, his sixth season starting, and he's already passed all of these names for playoff wins. If you go to Pat in the OT, the Chiefs, so Pat Mahomes is the only quarterback in the last 30 years to go 8 for 8 with 27 more yards rushing on any single drive, regular or postseason. So a quarterback just going 8 for 8 passing and rushing for over that many yards. It sounds like a really cherry pick stat. Only one to do it. Patrick Mahomes on that last drive also provided 69. Nice. of Kansas City,
Nice.
75 yards.
Amen, brother.
And two more things I want to throw at you. The Chiefs beat four of the 5 MVP finalists this postseason. So 4 of the 5 that were going up, the Chiefs beat them. The last 6 drives where Mahomes is going in, field goal, touchdown, field goal, touchdown. So at the very end, when they needed to score, freaking Pat does it again. And one thing I love about this, the cherry on top, and I know I talked to Matt about this yesterday, was the fact that if you look at this era of quarterbacks, you have Mahomes, you have Burrow, you have Josh Allen, you have Lamar, you have Tua, you have whoever the hell you want to name. The distance that Pat Mahomes has now put between himself and everybody else in the league, as far as like who is this generation's quarterback, is now 3 Super Bowls. 3 Super Bowl MVPs is the standard right now, and Pat is still going. And the only 2 people to score touchdowns for this team in the Super Bowl were MVS and Hardman. That's how they scored their touchdowns.
And Hardman wasn't even on the Chiefs roster to start the season.
No, he came from the Jets, which, funny enough, you know, they had that, was it Oz or whatever, the Mentalist?
The Mentalist,
and
yeah.
Hardman said, we are going to beat my team's going to beat the 49ers in the Super Bowl. And like, that's what he wrote down. And that's what came out of that whole Mentalist thing. That's what he was thinking. And I'm like,
well, can you also just imagine being Mecole Hardman, where you're on the Chiefs and you're kind of an ancillary piece, 2 years ago. You end up trying to go to the Jets, a team that you think is going to be a Super Bowl contending team. You're going to be able to make a name for yourself. And then you never even see the field. Like, they never played him, whatever. He comes back to the Chiefs. He makes some key mistakes that made everyone hate him and talk shit on him, including myself. And then you catch the game-winning ball in the Super Bowl for Kansas City. Like, that's just a wild ride over the course of one season that Mecole Hardman got to experience. It's awesome.
I think it is crazy. I heard it compared to sending your kids off to military camp, and then you realize home isn't so bad. So he like went off. He's like, damn, this sucked. I'm going to come back. I'll do whatever it takes. And like, now he's there. He got to do it. This is what the Patriots used to do, right? You want to talk, they cemented themselves as the dynasty. They found out a way to win ugly. And the people that get hung up on how the offense looked, because I think they were so used to looking at the Chiefs a certain way. They're just going to score a shit ton of points. That's all they're going to do. And you just have to outscore them. And they've just changed the way that they need to play. Pat changed the way he needed to play. He's self-admitted, I don't have to take all those shots. I will eat the ball. And you saw that a lot, where he would take it, he would tuck the ball, he would maybe dive forward for like 4 yards, and they'd have to punt. And everybody's like, what are you doing? Why are you not pulling rabbit at it? Well, he had the defense to do it. Like, this is a championship level defense, obviously. And I felt like the Chiefs were wasting it. Even that game on Christmas when they lost to the Raiders, I'm like, they are wasting a championship defense this year because they didn't get skill position players. And it played off in the end, where this defense, you have this all-pro offense. They had, weapons all over the place, and you're holding the Kittle like 4 yards receiving. Deebo Samuel had like 20 yards receiving. Like, these guys didn't do anything. They weren't doing anything. They had to rely on Jennings, like their fourth option, to like generate any offense, and a trick play to generate any offense. Like,
which is badass.
It was a sick play. It was also
a terrible throw and a great catch by CMC.
Also, if the Chiefs did that, everybody would have been shitting themselves and screaming illegal man downfield, because they were blocking like 5 yards downfield, just pushing people out of the way before the pass was even completed. I digress. But I think this is just, if there's no way this version of the Chiefs team should have won the Super Bowl.
I'm glad you recognize that, and I'm glad that and it's not, we have had this conversation before, right? This conversation has been continuous throughout the entirety of the playoff run. Like, you didn't expect the Chiefs to win. I didn't until the very end, because I was tired of losing. But like, you look at it, this team has a great defense, but this team on paper, much like last year, we thought the Eagles were the better team on paper last year, and I still do believe on paper last year the Eagles were the better team. The difference, and I said this last week in our show when we were talking about who's going to win the Super Bowl, I said the difference is Patrick Mahomes, and we saw it. You've seen it again, and for me, I mean, I have a lot of different thoughts on the Super Bowl, but I'm going to take a step back. Scotty, you haven't really had much to say. This is your team too.
I'm just taking it all in, brother. This, much like Alan said, I was 100%. What's his name? The Nick, the pundit, whatever.
Nick Wright.
Nick Wright. Yeah, he got this tattoo, never a doubt, about the Chiefs. And let me tell you, that does not describe me at all. I had about a billion fucking doubts, leading with Kadarius Toney dropping balls and Travis Kelce looking like he aged 30 years. And yeah, we had a great defense, but it's like, we're talking about the Super Bowl here. I mean, this is the NFL. This is the top of the top. And it's just hard to imagine. You go back, prior to the playoffs, this Chiefs team being able to find success. But you got Patrick Mahomes. I was watching the game with my wife and her family. And halfway through the second quarter, her dad said, "This game's over. Like, the Chiefs look terrible." And of course they did look terrible. And I said, well, we got Patrick Mahomes, bud. Like, you can't ever count out a Patrick Mahomes offense.
Do you call him
and
bud?
Of course, when the
Your
lights get
Bud. Yeah, did you just call your father-in-law Bud?
Yeah, well, I call my wife bro. It's just we're all 11.
Buds and bros.
Buds and bros. But yeah, you just can't ever count out a Patrick Mahomes offense because, obviously the lights are bright in the Super Bowl, but the lights are especially bright in the Super Bowl in the second half when you're down or when you're in overtime. And those are exactly the opportunities that Patrick Mahomes takes advantage of, where he just plays his best football and he seems to elevate everybody else around him. And that's just the impact that he has. My question for you guys is, everyone's comparing the Chiefs to the Patriots, and rightly so, because it's looking very similar right now. Are we at the point in the now dynasty where other players around the league start saying, well, I might take a little bit less money to get a piece of this action, and the Chiefs have a better time being able to sign some actual key pieces on the offensive side besides Patrick Mahomes? Are we at that point yet where the Chiefs are actually going to look better for years to come?
That's a good question, and it's one that I've kind of struggled with internally for a while now, because you could see the writing on the wall. But regardless of the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl, that writing was on the wall because of Patrick Mahomes, right? So, like, you look at free agents this offseason, you have somebody like Michael Pittman or T. Higgins, or even Hollywood Brown, if you want to throw him in there. Like, you have some of these guys who definitely could be a much-needed improvement for the Chiefs wide receiver room. At the end of the day, it comes down to this in my mind, and I'm not an NFL player. I've not played in the NFL, but I think it really comes down to how selfish is that player and what does the player truly want, right? Because do you want to go win a Super Bowl or do you want a shit ton of money? And that's not to say they're not going to get paid if they go to the Chiefs, but could you swing an extra $10 million if you go to somewhere like the Panthers, who are terrible, and you got $10 million extra in your pocket versus you lose, a $10 million pay cut to go play for the Chiefs? So I think probably the veterans, the guys who are a little bit older, would be wanting to take that pay cut because A, they know that they're not going to get that much money, and B, they want a ring before they're out of the league. That's where my mind lies, is I still think money talks at the end of the day. And that's where, if you can get $10 million more to go play for a shitty team, I think most players are probably going to take that. And that's my
Sleps, I'm glad that you brought up the age factor, because I feel like guys like Pittman and Higgins, they are young guys that are going to get paid. They're looking to get paid in their second contract. But if you look at guys like Hollywood Brown, who he's getting towards the end of his career, let's be honest, he's 28 years old, and wide receivers typically jump off a cliff at the age of 30. And even somebody like Mike Evans, those type of guys might be like, I have a year or two left. I might as well go get a ring because I've gotten my big rookie contract. I've gotten my big second contract. Now I'm in it to win it at this point in my career.
I mean, OBJ is a really good example of that, I think, where he didn't get paid top dollar. He is an older guy, and he went to go try and compete for another ring, and he went to the Ravens. So I think that Mike Evans could be a really interesting candidate because he is getting older, but still has some gas left in the tank. I think that the Chiefs, there's going to be some, if we're want to talk about where the rebuilding happens for the Chiefs and what pieces happen. I mean, you guys are losing both Willie Snead potentially and Chris Jones, who are both big name guys for you guys defensively. And that begs the question too of what do the Chiefs do moving forward? I think the Chiefs have shown
they're not losing them yet.
No, but they're on contract, and can you afford to pay them, and where's the money come from? And we all know that the cap space doesn't exist, but they're going to have to make some decisions and try and figure that out. So currently they're not on the, let's project the worst, that they are going to be off roster. So what do you do there? Or do you renegotiate? And where does that money come from? And then offensively, what does that mean? What is left over? Because Patrick Mahomes has now shown, I don't need the best in order to get it done, right? And we, midway through the season, that is the exact conversation we were having, where we were sitting here saying, these Chiefs are not going to succeed if they don't go get a wide receiver one. They didn't need one. They don't need a wide receiver because they have Patrick Mahomes. And so now it kind of begs the question, does the front office sit there and say, you guys did it with less, let's go continue to bolster the defense? And that potentially is probably going to happen.
That's your answer. That was your answer when they traded away Tyreek Hill. You had your answer. That's what they believed then. And they traded away Tyreek Hill. And the narrative last year was they don't have that top-end weapon. What are they going to do? They have a young defense. What are they going to do? They went and won a Super Bowl. You go to this year. Well, they're dropping all these passes. That you have Patrick Mahomes is the first quarterback in the salary cap era to have the biggest cap hit and win a Super Bowl. So now he's salary cap proof. So now you've proven not only do I not need to go pay top dollar for wide receivers, but I can still pay my quarterback top dollar without the risk of actually hurting my whole team. And they've drafted really well. You look at the draft class from the 2022 draft class that largely propelled this Chiefs team. You had guys like McDuffie. You had guys like Karlaftis. You had guys like Pacheco. You had all of these guys that were from top down. Really, the only miss they had was actually drafting Sky Moore and not taking Pickens. If they would have taken Pickens over Sky Moore, you would have talked about one of the deepest draft class probably in the history of the NFL that's propelling this. So the Chiefs are doing what dynasties have to do. You have to draft well, keep young players in, and have to know when, where, and when not to spend your money. And I think you had that answer when they let Tyreek Hill go. They let him walk. They didn't want to pay him. And that's the reason why this team was able to do what they did, because they were able to pay some of these defensive guys. So if you go back to Matt's question around, well, what do they, who do they attract? I think this offseason, it really starts with who wants to come back to try to go for 3 in a row. Does Chris Jones say, you know what? I'm not going to actually go and seek top dollar right now because I want this. Now we're in legacy building mode. You're doing things that nobody's ever done. You're in rare air. Like there is not a blueprint for this, and it's who wants to be a part of it. And I thought last night, even on Twitter, was telling when you had some of the players that were a part of the team that are no longer a part of the team tweeting about, hey, this is so cool. You had Tyrann Mathieu like gassing up all these guys. Like they know what this is about. And so I don't think they go out and spend on a top dollar wide receiver. I think if like a Mike Evans is willing to come play for less, cool, that's what they'll do. If not, they're going to just try to draft and develop. They do have Rashee Rice, who now is going to develop again. You look at how involved he was getting and the touches he was getting late in the season. Like they're not completely void of talent there. It was just glaring at the beginning because they were working through it in real time, which I thought was probably one of the bigger things. The other thing that came out of this game, which was interesting, where the Chiefs had a leg up, no pun intended, was the kicker. Like I think if Harrison Butker isn't on this team, I don't think they win this game either. I think that was probably the bigger story to me. Poor Jake Moody had made history where he had kicked the longest field goal ever in Super Bowl history at 55 yards, and then about 15 minutes later, Harrison Butker hit this low stinger 57-yard field goal to take that right away from him. So
still
even
lasted
in
longer
the
than
game,
Aaron Rodgers' season.
Oh God!
True.
Shots fired.
Well, that's what we need. I think if you look at how this team, how they played, I think the thing, if you're the NFL, I think the thing if you're the AFC, and Yeti, you said it early in the year, which really stuck out to me. This is the year you get the Chiefs. This is the year they're the most gettable, and they were. And in the playoffs, it did not matter. And it's whether you want to blame the refs, whether you want to say it was scripted, whether you want to say it was Taylor Swift. This team dealt with so much shit this year, led the league in drops. You had the Taylor Swift shit. Chris Jones wasn't even playing the beginning
Week
of the
one,
season.
He was sitting in the stands watching the Chiefs play.
He was not playing. And you get the ramp time, you see where this team developed, and it's like, holy shit. If you're the rest of the NFL, you're a GM, you really are kind of like, I need to go get a quarterback. And I think you see some of those moves being made already, like by the Steelers. You hear whispers of the Broncos, like, we'll trade the farm to go get a top quarterback. Like, it's highlighting that the quarterback play has to be top notch. And if you're somebody like Josh Allen, where you are literally having statistically one of the best NFL careers ever, and you just keep running into Pat Mahomes, that's just what's happening. Like, and so teams got to figure it out, because it used to be the Chiefs were in an arms race for offense. Now we need all these star players. We need all these offense. And the Chiefs pivoted in one season and we're like, nope, we're just going all defense now. And everybody's like, oh, fuck. Now we got to go defense.
But I think the quarterback, and this is something that I do firmly, I think Patrick Mahomes is the greatest quarterback to ever play this sport, period, bar none. I don't think there is a quarterback. I think he's better than Tom Brady. I think he is the best quarterback to play in the NFL. Now, does he have the same accolades as Tom Brady? No, but he's not nearly as old, and give him time, and I would put everything I own that he will get there, which is great if you're a Chiefs fan. If you're not a Chiefs fan, hello. It makes it a little bit more depressing.
In the AFC West. So.
Yeah, or in the
Sorry,
AFC
man.
West. Sorry, Eddie. So you look at it and it's like, yeah, they have the ability to do that because of what they have there. If you were to take Josh Allen and try and do the same thing, and I don't want to take anything from Josh Allen because he is a good quarterback. He is a successful quarterback, but it's just a different level. If you took all of Josh Allen's weapons away from him, I don't think you find the same success that the Chiefs did. And it's because you have a generational quarterback that is better than every other quarterback in the NFL, period. So that is what has allowed the Chiefs to do that. And that's kind of what the same thing with the Patriots and has allowed them to do that. I want to focus on the Super Bowl here for a second because I do think there is a way to beat Patrick Mahomes. And I'm sitting there watching it and saying, if the 49, there was one play that really sticks out in my mind as to where the 49ers really botched this. Yes, they missed an extra point. If they made that, this is a different conversation. But it was fourth quarter. There was like 3 minutes left on the clock. There's 5 minutes left on the clock, excuse me. And I was watching with a group of people, and I turned to him and I said, if the 49ers want to win this game, you don't give the ball back to Patrick Mahomes. That is how they win this game. Chew the clock, march down the field, kick a field goal. Do not give Patrick Mahomes 10 seconds. We know what he can do with 12 seconds. Give him 10 seconds. Give him as less amount of time as possible to try and march his ass down the field. And it was 3rd and 4, and they called a pass play, and it got tipped by Purdy. And I'm sitting there thinking, why did you do that? What made you want to call a pass play when you haven't been passing the entire quarter? You have been handing the ball off to the best running back in the NFL, Christian McCaffrey. And on 3rd and 4, you decide to throw the ball. And I think it was like right around the 2-minute warning. I don't have the exact times in front of me. But if they would have handed off the ball to Christian McCaffrey, a couple things would happen. They could have got the first down, which is what they were hoping for. But even if they don't get the first down, you force the Chiefs to either take a timeout at that point or you run an extra 30 seconds off the clock-ish. Why would you not give the ball to Christian McCaffrey in that moment? And the Chiefs were brilliant. They were bringing heat. I remember the play. They were bringing heat. It was probably unlikely that Christian McCaffrey was going to get a first down. But regardless, you try and play clock management, and then you kick that field goal just like they did, but you took more time off the clock. I don't understand why teams have not figured out, just don't give Patrick Mahomes the ball and you win the game. If you have the ball and you are in a position to win the game via kicking a field goal or you're ahead, don't let Patrick Mahomes touch the ball. And the 49ers did, and we saw exactly what happened. So that's where I that is one play that really stood out to me where I was like, as soon as they called that pass play and it wasn't completed, I said the 49ers are going to lose this game. And that's exactly what happened. So that's my take on the 49ers side of things. I'm interested to see what you guys think and how this game shook down. So feel free to jump in.
Well, the 49ers are interesting because obviously Kyle Shanahan in his tenure with the 49ers has been awesome. I mean, this team has been dominant. If they win even a couple more games over the last few years, we're talking about them being a dynasty. I mean, let's be honest. They have been absolutely dominant. And when people are talking shit on Kyle Shanahan, they're talking about the 28-3 game where he was offensive coordinator for the Falcons. They're talking about last Super Bowl when they were up by double digits and then lost, and then this Super Bowl when they were up by double digits and then lost. Well, guess who Kyle Shanahan was playing in all three of those games? Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes. So, okay, you're talking about the two best quarterbacks in the history of the NFL. Yes, he made mistakes, but this team is ultimately awesome. What I want to ask you guys is about this controversial overtime coin flip situation. The overtime rules changed. Okay, so now both teams are guaranteed a possession, and Kyle Shanahan elects to take the ball. Now, the argument against that is, okay, if you defer and you get the ball second, like we saw from the Chiefs, okay, 4th down comes up in a territory where you normally probably wouldn't go for it or you'd consider punting the ball, but they already scored points, so we have to go for it. So you give Patrick Mahomes 4 downs now to make that decision. Kyle Shanahan basically came out and said, well, we were playing for the 3rd possession. If both teams scored 2 touchdowns, then the next team to score wins. We get the ball in that case. But it seemed like maybe a lot of the 49ers, Kyle Juszczyk in postgame came out and basically said, well, I thought if we took the ball and scored, we'd win. Seemed like some of the 49ers may not have been as familiar with these new overtime rules, which new should be in scare quotes because these rules were announced 2 years ago. They were just implemented this year, and this is the first postseason game to actually feature them in action. But the rules have been out forever, and the Kansas City Chiefs players, you've had several of them coming out saying, yeah, we talked about this in OTAs. We, leading up to the Super Bowl, every single day, we'd have some sort of meeting where we'd go over new rules, and we've talked about it a lot, and we've game planned for this. And the argument against Kyle Shanahan's point is, okay, the Chiefs, let's say the 49ers go down, score a touchdown, they give the ball back to the Chiefs. The 49ers are hoping the Chiefs score, kick an extra point, and then the 49ers have a chance to go win the game. And the Chiefs players are saying, well, we've been preparing all week to go for 2 in that situation, right? We're going to try and win the game there. So Kyle Shanahan is giving the ball away, or is basically showing his hand, not allowing his team to be in the best possible position to win. And then on top of that, just assuming the Chiefs aren't going to just try and win the game on their possession. So this has been a very controversial call. And I think after the result of this game, you're never going to see a team elect to take the ball in overtime again.
It's the college rule. It's just like college. Just like in college overtime, you don't want to have the ball first because you want to know what you have to do. And if Shanahan was playing that way, and this you reverse the possessions, and they drove down the field now second on that 4th and short inside the 10. Now they're going for it to score a touchdown. Like, it totally changes your play calling. Where he messed up is, and where his little analytics didn't really come into play, was Mahomes. Mahomes now knows I have to go for it on 4th down. So now you have to stop Pat on 4 downs, not 3. So now you're giving him just an extra chance where he has to do it. And I heard he said he wanted to give his defense a rest and all that. It's just, I think they messed up. I think they all thought, hey, I need to get the ball first. I think a lot of this is window dressing in some of the players. If you're one of the players that didn't know, can you not say that out loud? That's what I would be saying if I'm the 49ers organization. Just shut the hell up and say, yeah, this is what we plan to do, instead of saying, I didn't know.
Because it's
I don't
embarrassing
know what we're doing here. Yeah, it is. It's embarrassing. How are you not prepared? This is your profession, and you didn't know the rules of your profession? Like, obviously that's on the coaches, but some of that's personal responsibility. But I think Juszczyk even said he was reading it on the screens, the rules of the overtime. Like, what is that?
Which
like,
is wild.
How's nobody? You had Chris Jones saying we're going for 2. The defensive lineman
who doesn't even touch the ball,
who isn't going to be in then, knew they were going for 2. And I think that's just the difference in organizations. Like, I think that's the level of preparedness you have to have. And in this game, it does come down to those small decisions. I think if that roles reversed, they would have kicked it first, so they know what they had to do. But I think it was just a huge miss. I think they just weren't prepared, and I think it showed.
There's one last thing I want to touch on as far as the game is concerned. And I've seen this floated around a lot, and I want to voice my thoughts and opinions on it, is Travis Kelce. He got pretty upset, and he shoved Big Red and got in his face and is screaming at him. I was pretty disappointed to see that out of Travis Kelce. I understand that the emotions are high and that this is a big game, but for you to shove your head coach, I don't care who you are, I don't care who you're dating, I don't care what stardom and you have, you don't touch Big Red. You don't shove your head coach like that and scream at him and get in his face. That to me was really disrespectful. I think it was uncalled for. And very disappointed in Travis Kelce in that moment. I just don't think that was a good thing to do, and I wanted to throw that out there.
I'll take this one. Andy Reid was asked about this in the post game, and his exact quote. Well, I don't have his exact quote in front of me. I'll paraphrase. It was essentially, "We have players who want to be on the field, and I absolutely love that. Travis Kelce would not have done that if we didn't have the relationship that we have." So I agree with you. It was a terrible visual. It looked like Travis Kelce was fucking insane. But at the end of the day, Andy Reid drafted Travis Kelce. They have been on the same team for 1 billion years now. They have a close relationship. And what you're seeing there is mutual respect to a certain degree, where he knows Andy Reid. He knows Andy Reid loves the competitiveness. And guess what? In the first half, prior to Travis Kelce screaming at Andy Reid, he had 1 target, 1 catch for 1 yard. He finished the game with 9 receptions for over 90 yards receiving, including some key ones that led them to a win. So whatever relationship they've got where they've got to do that to win the Super Bowl, I'm all in for it.
So
I
what
agree
Scotty's
it was a bad
saying
look.
is
It's
so what
okay.
Scotty's saying is he should have pushed him sooner.
Yeah,
Should
to
have pushed
fix
him
some of
harder.
these things.
I still don't agree with it. I don't care what kind of relationship you have. That is your head coach. And
Families fight. Here's the thing: families fight. They're a family. From the outside looking in, you have your own perception of it, and I get how it didn't look good. The other, but I don't know how they interact when this camera isn't on them. I don't know. Does he get in Andy's
Sure.
face in the practice? I don't know that. And they're a family. It's a.
But if
heated
we're sitting
game.
here, let's say hypothetically this is Kadarius Toney that does that, we're having a much different conversation. And regardless of what's going on behind closed
well, he
doors,
hasn't earned that trust to do that.
Sure, but my point being is it doesn't matter. Like they could be joking around and do that behind closed doors to begin with because maybe him and Reed are really close friends. But because you're sitting here saying that they don't have the right to do that doesn't mean that Andy Reid doesn't feel that way. And that's my exact counterpoint to this entire
I'm saying
argument.
I don't know. I would say Kadarius probably wouldn't have gotten away with that because of the relationship that they've had over so many years. Like Kadarius has been there for 2 years and largely hasn't played a ton, and obviously is going on IG talking shit.
But they could be best friends behind closed doors, and
maybe.
And Reed just doesn't think he's a great player. I don't know, but my point being is, visually, Travis Kelce was allowed to get away with it because he's Travis Kelce and not because it was some other player. If Chris Jones were to come up and do that, it'd probably also look different, right?
I think Chris Jones would have gotten away with it too.
I don't know.
Andy Reid laid on top of Chris Jones.
So
in a very
what you're
sexual
saying?
way
So
after
what
the game.
about Travis Kelce allows him to get away with it then? In your
I
opinion?
think a lot of it being his stardom and who he is and
no,
him
I
as a
disagree
player.
Fundamentally, I disagree fundamentally.
I don't.
I think. Well, you're inferring things just like I am off closed doors.
Sure. I mean,
So,
we
like,
both
you're
are because we
inferring-
don't know anything about it.
But
about
if
their
Andy Reid's
relationship.
coming out at the end of the day and saying, "Hey, that's the relationship we have," you really don't have anything else to go off of, any than maybe like personal agenda against maybe Travis Kelce or what he represents. Which
No, I
totally understand from
don't.
an NFL perspective, because I've heard this on other shows today where they're like, "He should never do that. I don't like. This is why I don't like him. This is why he rubs me the wrong way." And that's fine if he rubs you the wrong way, but don't project your feelings about him onto a situation where you may have like a percentage of insight into what may have actually happened. Is my point. Like, I don't know what the relationship is. Andy Reid said it's good. He said, "Hi, I'm sorry." Listen, families fight, and in that moment, maybe he shouldn't have been in it. And the way Travis said it was, Noah Gray was in on that blocking play, which is something they do a lot, and he let the guy go free, which then caused the fumble. And so, under that umbrella, like, you're telling me he's upset because he wanted to be in blocking? Like,
No,
so
look, I know why he did it. I understand why. And I understand that, Reed is fine with it. They also won the Super Bowl. So what is Reed supposed to say? Like, no, he shouldn't have done that. He's like, Reed wouldn't say that. But that's my point, is that's not who Andy Reid is. Families fight, that's fine. But you don't shove your head coach and get in his face and scream. Regardless, I don't care if you're Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes or Travis Kelce. You just don't do it.
I agree.
Like, it's just disrespectful.
On the sideline like that, I agree. I agree on the side. Like, it was out of place 100%. And I don't condone it, and I don't think it was a great look for him at all. I think the point you just made about them winning is poignant, because if they lost,
then what?
Now what are we saying about that, right? But much like any wars fought in history, it's written by the winners, not by the losers. So there you go.
And that I get that. I wanted to air out my thoughts on that because I
think
have
it's
thought
good.
about it, and I just didn't think it was the right thing to do.
And not to mention, we've seen these kind of interactions from the Chiefs before. Even in this game, we saw Rashee Rice get in Patrick Mahomes' face when Patrick Mahomes didn't get the ball to him when he was open in the end zone. And I look at that. You can look at that from two perspectives. One, you're a rookie. You're talking to maybe the greatest quarterback ever. Like, watch your fucking mouth. Or two, these guys are on the same team. They're trying to work together. They're working through these emotions. And guess what? It's brought them all this success. So clearly something's working. I would much rather have this sort of fight and this drive to be great than have to go into a locker room and everybody's crying and being emotional all the time. Like, this is a man's version of emotion. This is what you like to see on the sidelines.
Well, this is your version of emotion, Scotty. I'd like to point that out because
I'm giving my
I think the
opinion, so I think
Lions
that's-
locker room would largely argue your version of emotion versus theirs. Your version
well,
is
if they
getting
want to watch
physical
a
and pushing with each
280-pound man cry every game,
Okay,
I
here
guess
we
that's
go.
their prerogative.
Here's how would this go if Travis did that to Dan Campbell?
Dan Campbell would have
Like,
fucking punched him right in
he
the
would've
jaw.
cried.
That's what I'm
guaranteed.
saying. Like, how would this have turned out? Because I will agree with you. And if you look at the video, Andy Reid looked super surprised that he even did that.
Oh, he did,
He was
and then
like,
he
"Whoa,
like
what's
Just because he
fuck
had a
is
hip
this?
replacement, he almost tipped over like a weeble.
That's
Weebles
true.
wobble, but they don't fall down.
I wanted to point that out.
free ads.
I don't have anything else to
No, I
dissect
think,
in this
no,
game.
but I think it's a good thing to call it, because had they lost, you would have looked at that totally differently.
Very.
And
that's
the one
that's-
thing I really
ahead,
want to say about this game is going back to Hunter's point about how you beat Patrick Mahomes. And I think teams recognize that in the postseason. You look at what Miami wanted to do and how they were so successful this season was setting up the run to set up or running the ball to set up the pass. They tried to run the ball. They couldn't on the Chiefs, and that kind of fucked up their game plan. Then you go to Buffalo. Buffalo had a lot of success running the ball on the Chiefs in their game, but then they faded away from running the ball in the second half because of who? Because of Patrick Mahomes. They knew Patrick Mahomes was on the other side of the field, and that puts pressure on guys like Josh Allen and the offensive coordinator, so they get away from their guns. Then you look at Baltimore. What has Baltimore been good at all season? Running the ball. Did they run the ball at all against the Chiefs? No. And I think it comes down to pressure. And Kyle Shanahan felt that last night too. They had so much success running the ball in the first half.
Yeah.
What did they do coming out of halftime? They don't run the ball at all in the third quarter. 0 rush attempts in the third quarter. Christian McCaffrey had 9 carries in total in the second half for less than 40 yards. And I get the Chiefs' run defense was very, very good last night. But I think it goes back to a mental thing with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. We have to keep up and play with these guys. We have to throw the ball to keep up with these guys when in reality, the Chiefs' offense, they don't have any star power. I mean, we've said that all season. Who are they going to throw to? Travis Kelce, who's wobbling down the field? You know, they don't really have any firepower except for that mental block of Mahomes and Andy Reid. We don't want to give them any time, which is something that we said about Tom Brady for how many years? You don't want to give Tom Brady even a minute because he's going to go down the field. We're saying the same things we said about Tom Brady or about Patrick Mahomes that we said about Tom Brady, and that's pretty telling.
I think what's interesting about all this too is that we said he doesn't, this version of the Chiefs offense was not like what we're accustomed to. And I think, Hunter said it multiple times, like, hey, this, what are they missing? What are they missing? What are they missing? And you go to now you fast forward to the Super Bowl and you know what this offense is and isn't. And you still felt like you couldn't give Pat the ball. Like, I think that's what's amazing about this whole thing is you still feel like you needed to keep up with them, that something was going to happen. And I think you're absolutely right. The start of that third quarter is actually where it got away from them because you couldn't control it anymore. You were letting the Chiefs kind of hang around and get back into it, let them get a rhythm. And then they found it and away we go. I think it sucks because you see it. If you're the other team, you're like, you know what you have to do. Now, does game pressure allow you to do that anymore? And you feel it and you're like, oh shit.
And the game script was totally in the 49ers' favor the whole game, the whole entire game. I mean, even the first quarter when they fumbled the ball and when they had their second drive kind of fizzle out after a bunch of holding calls, the game was still in their hands where they could have ran the ball 40 times and we would have been here saying maybe the 49ers are the champs because they were running the ball effectively and they got away from it. But they did go back to it in the fourth quarter and in overtime, which we saw. And McCaffrey getting
they started to see success again. Yeah,
exactly.
And that's where that 3rd and 4 call really sticks out in my mind. And I'm like,
yeah, you're
man,
right.
You had it. Like you get that first down, and the 49ers probably win that game. They're in field goal range. You can kind of chunk down the clock, force the Chiefs to use all their timeouts, and if you get one more first down, you probably win this game. And that's how close this game. I mean, if they made the extra point, that's also a different conversation. But
I think that's the biggest player so far. That's the biggest play of the game. Besides the fumble on the punt, I think that missed extra point.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and that just goes to show you how good the 49ers played. I mean, you watch this whole game and minus a couple weird plays. I mean, this team when they gave the ball to Christian McCaffrey, they dominated. And the offensive and defensive lines on the 49ers both dominated the entire game. I was watching like our pass pro with people like Jawan Taylor, who I've talked more shit about than anybody except maybe Dan Campbell. It was terrible, just pathetic. The 49ers were rushing 4, and Patrick Mahomes would finish his 3-step drop, and it would be in a complete panic already. And he was afraid to even, and maybe it's because of the receiving talent or lack thereof on the Chiefs, but he would not reset the pocket. pocket. He was not stepping up. As soon as he was getting pressured, he was trying to run away from
No.
Nick Bosa. It was the 49ers.
Pat wasn't sharp. Pat wasn't
No,
sharp at
he
the
was-
beginning.
that's
They were
what-
in his head.
Yeah, and that's what's crazy because you watch games like that, and obviously, like I said, the offensive line, the lack of superb talent at the receiver position make a difference. But you watch these games and you see Pat's got a lot of room for improvement still. I mean, he can make smarter, sharper plays, and this offense could be much more efficient. And even when they had an explosive offense with Tyreek Hill, you still saw a lot of this. Obviously, he makes awesome plays with his legs and scrambles and keeps plays alive. But sometimes, he could just step up, and he's got as good an arm as anybody in the league. He can huck the ball 65 yards downfield, and he just doesn't really take those chances right now. So I don't know. It's really interesting. But I think the 49ers ultimately, they definitely deserve to be there. They played a good game. And Brock Purdy, people call him a game manager. Again, it's been every game this season where whether he does a lot or doesn't do a lot, he's got like a handful of throws that you watch him make and you're like, that was the most pinpoint accurate throw. I don't know if anyone else in the league could make a throw like that. I think Brock Purdy might be the real deal. And I know this conversation's been going on forever, but I have yet to see anything happen throughout the season that makes me doubt Brock Purdy.
Yeah, I agree.
Does that mean you want him on your dynasty team? Because I'll trade him to you.
We'll talk about
We're
it.
in the cycle of the 49ers where they start believing in their quarterback. And then
Yeah,
they go and
like,
they
I don't
realize
know.
he may not be the one again.
I don't think he.
They did this with Jimmy G. After that Super Bowl, they're like, hey, I think he can do it. Like, I think this is the guy.
I
And then
never.
just shit
I think
happens.
Brock Purdy's better than Jimmy G, and I have thought that.
I agree.
So I
I
don't
agree.
think Jimmy G has ever been a good quarterback.
But
I
let
think
me ask you guys this: is this 49ers team capped out with their current roster? If they run it back next year with the same exact roster, is this kind of their peak?
I mean, I think if
it's
this is
Pat.
a peak, I would certainly take it as a Cardinals fan with my team going to the Super Bowl. I think
With a good chance to win the Super Bowl.
sure.
They
I
would've
do
beaten
think so. Yeah,
Any other team.
I do think that this was the best version of the 49ers from a player perspective that we will see. It was a stacked roster. And the 49ers, they didn't get outplayed. They got a little outcoached, in my opinion. I do think that. And I think that's indicative of the play calling, and that's what we saw. I don't think that talent level wise, I think much like last year, I think on paper the 49ers are a hell of a lot better than the Chiefs. But the difference is, once again, your quarterback, and that has made all the difference. And that's where I think that the 49ers on paper, I don't know if they can get any better than they can now. It's just you got to sharpen up that play calling and put your players in the best position to win. And I think that there was a couple missed opportunities in that category.
I think if they had to play anybody else, they would have beaten them. Any other AFC team, I think they would have won. You'd be talking about them winning the Super Bowl. But at the end,
Even the Ravens?
It's the maybe. I don't know. It's the same. Maybe not the Ravens. Yeah.
I think
don't
they
know.
would have beat the Ravens.
I think they could have. I think what it comes down to is the same thing as last year. They had everybody has all the best pieces. They construct these rosters. They have all these talented players and weapons. But at the two most important positions going into this game, once again, the Chiefs had the better head coach, had the better quarterback, and that ultimately got them at the end. You could throw in the better kicker too, but in the in
Moody
three
played a pretty
something.
good game besides the one low kick, and Harrison
did.
Butker also had a low kick that very easily could have been blocked.
It could have, and that's what and I think it's just that's what it ultimately came down to. I think if you're a 49ers fan, you're like, what more can we do? At putting together a roster. I think if I kind of go back and I wax poetic about certain quarterbacks throughout the year, and one being Josh Allen and the Bills during this run. I think if they would have beaten the Chiefs, I think they would have been in this scenario. I think the Bills could have done this. And I think there's a few quarterbacks where you just can't game plan for. And it looks like the 49ers, it's quarterbacks that can run and use their legs. And you saw the Chiefs kind of pivot to that in the fourth quarter and overtime, where Mahomes was now taking off. They're doing like design reads and runs for him to go. And Mahomes now is the leading rushing quarterback in Super Bowl history. He has the most yards of any quarterback rushing in Super Bowl history, just as a stat. And he's still going to play in more. So that number is going to keep going up for his rushing totals. But I think people always forget that he can run every time. It boggles my mind that they always forget that he can run, but then he does it and everybody's like, oh shit.
It's because he doesn't do it in the regular season. What he does is he extends plays and he looks downfield, but there is no better time than the Super Bowl to decide, okay,
That's
let's
what I'm
tuck it and
saying.
run. Because if you get hurt, well, it's the last game, right? Like this is what you do to get here. And I think Andy Reid has coached that out of him, where it's like, hey, like you don't run unless you absolutely have to, and there is a reason to do it. Like Josh Allen will tuck the ball and run to get an extra 5 yards versus Mahomes. He might slide and it's fourth down, or then it's a fourth down because he doesn't get the extra yard, and he's like, you know what, I'm protecting myself because we need to win the game, and I am the component that will win that game.
One more note. We can get to the award show. I know we want to get to the awards. I know anybody here wants to hear what the awards are. You look at the last play that the Chiefs ran, and what's one of the things we've talked about a lot on this podcast was the Chiefs' inability to score in the red zone. And then you go to that last play where they ran it basically identical what they did to the Eagles in last year's Super Bowl, and you think like, oh yeah, I forgot about that play. And then you go to the regular season, you're like, well, why didn't they run that play during the regular season, try to score more? And it's because Andy Reid freaking knows I need to keep one of those up my sleeve at the very end until I absolutely need it. And then in the biggest games, in the biggest situations, they're prepared. They practice it. They're ready to go. And now I'm just like, maybe I just shouldn't care what happens during the regular season. Matt and I know we're like clawing our faces, like, what is this team doing? And then you get to the end, you're like, oh yeah, they got it. Oh yeah, they can do that. Oh yeah, they were practicing that. And so I think kudos to the staff to like keeping it all together, keeping them organized in overtime. I think that was the difference. I think just their ability and their preparedness at the end of the game was just better than what the 49ers did. I think they just tried to they tried to out Jimmy and Joe them, and then Andy Reid out X and O them.
Well, and I just want one last thing before the award show. Tony Romo, as per usual, is getting a lot of shit because he makes a lot of random noises and says some funny stuff.
I don't know, Jim.
Tony Romo saved my life on this broadcast because when that clock in overtime was running down, I was having a freaking heart attack. I was having a meltdown. Like, what the fuck is going on? And Tony Romo said, I literally said out loud, why are they not calling timeout? And right as I finished the sentence, Tony Romo's beautiful, magical voice came over the broadcast and said, for everyone at home wondering why they're not calling a timeout, and then explained it. I was like, oh, thank God.
I didn't
Tony
know
Romo.
that.
I didn't know that either.
So in a sense, they can just turn off the clock.
Well, I was thinking about this. The reason that they have the clock in this is because they have to allot time for breaks for commercials. I think that's why. Because if the clock ran out, they would take like a 2 or 3 minute long break, and they would allow a commercial break in that moment. I think that's why they do it.
That was odd. Yeah, they would have switched fields. It was like a change of the quarter. Apparently,
well, Scotty,
I didn't know that.
You mentioned commercials, so before we fully pivot over to this award show, I gotta hear you guys' thoughts and opinions. Yeti, your favorite commercial and or the commercial that stood out to you the most in the Super Bowl?
And I have to say, we used to be a proud country and have great commercials, but my gosh, we are going down and down, boys. Like, there's only a handful that really stuck out to me last night, but I think the top for me has to be the Ben Affleck and J-Lo Dunkin' Donuts commercial, because
that was great.
I was dying the whole time. I can't think of any
Brady's
other
playing the freaking piano in the back.
Yep.
Yeah, that was good. Scotty, what about you?
I didn't watch a lot of the commercials. I've learned this over the last couple of years when the Chiefs are actually in the Super Bowl. I actually use the commercials as breaks where I get up and get food or go to the bathroom. So I didn't watch a lot of them. The one that stands out to me is the stupid Jesus commercial where everybody's washing each other's feet.
Oh,
that commercial, It was terrible. They
was
made
sweet.
Jesus look like a foot fetishist.
I was going to say, could you imagine if you had a foot fetish and you're watching that? You're like,
oh, shit. Yeah.
You need like 5 to 10 minutes.
No, that was like one of the few commercials I saw, and I was like, okay, I'm done with commercials now.
I didn't see that one. I thought that one was weird when somebody described. I didn't see it, and I also didn't get to hear the Usher halftime show very well because it was very loud. Scotty, you know that house. It was quite loud.
I do. That's part of the reason why I wasn't there. Not for the halftime show, but for the actual game.
I know. I think the only commercial I got that I like laughed at was the Aubrey Plaza Nick Offerman Mountain Dew commercial.
Yeah, the Baja.
I'm a big
or the Blast.
Yeah, I'm a big Parks and Rec fan, so that is also hit a sweet spot for me. That was probably one of my favorites.
I think my favorite commercial was the Michael Cera one with the lotion. I thought it was pretty out of left field, and it made me laugh quite a bit. So my fiance uses that lotion, and I never even thought of, like, I see it's sitting on the bathroom sink. I see it all the time. Never once have I ever thought Michael Cera, and as soon as like they promoted him as the face of it, I was just like, this is incredible. Like this
That's so
is
funny. Yeah,
yeah.
we need to. I miss all the like weird Pepsi commercials and like
Yeah.
Budweiser ones where they would just like go balls. There'd be like 20 Budweiser commercials and like half of them would be funny. Now it's just like political feed, random
I
thing.
think the commercials are just too expensive,
Political
man.
feet. They are. They're getting too pricey. The only ones who can afford them are Bob Blast and Lotion and God.
And Jesus.
And God.
Jesus
got
has
racks.
infinite money. Jesus has infinite money.
All right, let's pivot over to the award show. So like I mentioned at the very beginning of this episode, we put out a poll to all the Brainiacs over on X or Twitter, whatever we're calling it, and asked you guys who you guys think should win these awards. So we did not come up with the award finalist, or we came up with a finalist, but you guys are the ones who chose the winners. So let's start off with the Pamela Anderson Award for the biggest bust in fantasy football. The 4 candidates were Quentin Johnston, Austin Eckler, Patrick Mahomes, or Tyreek because of the sex. Now, gentlemen, before we announce who won, who do you guys think should win?
Hands down, Austin Eckler.
Austin Eckler. We got one Austin Eckler. Scotty.
If he's taken Austin Eckler, that would also be my first choice, but I would then vote for Quentin Johnston. We had high hopes for that boy coming into the season.
I did. I'm taking Quentin Johnston. And Allen.
Because I like the sex component of this and because of how many children Tyreek Hill has, I would vote Tyreek Hill.
At
Okay.
the same time.
All right. Here we go. That was not a drum roll. This is a drum roll. Austin Eckler, 56.3% on 174 votes. Not a surprise. Austin Eckler taking the first round. He did nothing for you. So I apologize to anybody that drafted Austin Eckler. It was a bust. He wins the Bust of the Year award from us. And now the next category, if it wasn't for that fucking injury, the 4 candidates are Aaron Rodgers, Mark Andrews, Nick Chubb, and Joey Burrow. Alan, we'll start with you. Who did you vote for?
It's hard to not pick one of the quarterbacks, so I'm going to pick one of the quarterbacks. And for me, I think if you look at what this team could have done this year, who was probably most primed to also win the AFC, so Joe Burrow would have been mine. I think if anytime you lose a generational talent at quarterback for your team and you're kind of like ready to win now, I think that's just a big kick in the nuts.
Okay. Scotty.
Yeah, I mean, at this point in my life, I'm no longer surprised when Joe Burrow's not playing because it seems like that happens every season where he's knocked out for some period of time. So I want to say Aaron Rodgers, but part of me thinks that guy's kind of old. I'm not sure he would have done a whole lot, or at least not done as much as people think. So I'm going to go with Nick Chubb. That man is an absolute beast. Obviously, the heart and soul of that offense, and that injury was disgusting and terrible. And I certainly hope that he comes back better than ever. But that was rough. So that's my vote.
Okay. Yeti.
I'm going to tail with Allen and go Joe Burrow. If you look at Jamar Chase's and T. Higgins' production, it fell off a freaking cliff after Joe Burrow went down. So
It was sad.
Yeah.
Sad days if you owned either of those on your roster. I'm going to go Aaron Rodgers here. I had the Jets as a preseason favorite for playoff contention, and regardless of, there's a lot of speculation if Aaron Rodgers is going to be good or not with the Jets. He is getting older, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I would have at least liked to see it play out this year, and now I have to wait until next year to see how that plays out. So for personal reasons, I would have liked Aaron Rodgers to win this award, and let's see who won. Nick Chubb at 40.5% off of 200 votes. Aaron Rodgers came in second at 29, and Joey B in third at 26.5. Yeah, the Nick Chubb, man, that injury was so disgusting. I was actually talking about this injury with friends last night, and I was like, that injury to me is still one of the most disgusting things. They wouldn't show it on the broadcast after it happened, and it was really bad.
What was the waiver pickup when he went down? Like, who was everybody?
Jerome Ford.
Jerome Ford. That's one of my. side note to this, like when a player goes down, you like pick up players you wouldn't. And I used to go back and look at some of my old fantasy teams and just like who I ended the season starting. I'm like, I don't even know who the fuck this is. I forgot all about this dude, but yet he was somehow vital to me winning.
It is really funny when you go look at your like past years and you're like, who the fuck is this guy? Like, why was I starting him? But it's like your roster from the beginning of the year to the end of the year just looks completely different because of the waivers and injuries and all that stuff.
Chubb was on one too, man.
Yeah, he was. And that team really was on one. And I would have loved to see that team with him on it because they were killing it this year. So next award is Strike One Award. The player that burned you this year, but you're still pretty high on. The candidates are Jackson Smith-Njigba, Tony Pollard, Kyle Pitty City, and T. Higgins. Scotty, who did you vote for? Please.
You already know my answer,
It's
bro.
fucking Kyle Pitts because it's Kyle Pitts or bust.
Kyle Pitts, no matter what. I got the sticky note always in front of me.
Okay, I gotta ask this question. I really gotta ask this question. At what point do we finally cut fucking rope on Kyle Pitts? Because it's been a long time. We're never.
Yeah,
Never.
I mean, first of
Never.
all, never, of course, because Kyle
Okay.
Pitts, no matter what. But Kyle Pitts obviously has been very disappointing since his rookie season, and even in his rookie season with over 1,000 yards receiving, still only finished with 1 touchdown. But look at this team around him. He's had to deal with Marcus Mariota. He's had to deal with Desmond Ridder. He's had to deal with Arthur Smith never wanting to ever give the ball to any of the weapons on the team. I mean, he's been set up for failure since his rookie season. So are we surprised that the production is not nearly as good given what's going on around him? So I think, I might not be as excited to get him on my team because I think this team kind of needs to prove it to me that they're going to be competent. But you get an actual quarterback in there, you get an actual balanced offense that's willing to use all the weapons they picked up. I think Kyle Pitts could be very, very useful for fantasy football, and I hope that happens for my guy.
He's going to look really good with Justin Fields next year.
I don't know. Justin Fields there's talk that he's going to the Steelers. Maybe we'll see. There's murmurs, little sprinkles of murmur. I would vote for T. Higgins. I think that T. Higgins has been historically a very good wide receiver, and I think Joe Burrow, in large, being not playing was a reason we didn't see success.
Question for you, Slaps.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Are you also sneakily high on him because of maybe where he could end up besides
and that's
featured?
Yes, because he could be a featured wide receiver one, and that's the other half of the coin. Is like wherever he goes, I think he will garner wide receiver one money. I think he's like kind of like Rashee Rice. I think he's probably better than Rashee Rice, but like as far as like categorically where I put them from a team perspective, like Rashee Rice is a wide receiver 1B, and they need a true wide receiver 1A to help him a lot. And that's kind of what I look like at T. Higgins, and maybe it's just because he's been tied to Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow for so long, so maybe I just have that perception. But it could be boom or bust. It depends on where he goes. If he ends up with the Panthers, he could still find a lot of success because he's the only wide receiver they have, but it's also the Panthers, and it's pretty gross. But he's, out of the list of these people, he's the one that I've chosen, because the other ones, there's some... That's a whole conversation. So I'll just stick with T. Higgins. And who did you vote for, Alan?
One is selfish because I know I have him on Dynasty formats, but JSN, Jackson Smith-Njigba, I think the talent is off the charts. I think he was buried on a depth chart where obviously they had two stalwarts in Seattle that were probably going to get more of the looks, but he came on later in the year. They started getting the ball downfield, and I think that he can be featured. If you have the opportunity to grab him for cheap and sit on him, if people are kind of like soured on him or need to make a move for this year, I think it's a good look. Don't come to me because I'm keeping him because I am still high on him, and I think I'm looking forward to see what he can produce because the talent's all there. You just got to get him the looks.
And I think it's worth noting too that Seattle, they just hired the Washington Huskies offensive coordinator, and they threw the ball a shit ton the past 2 seasons with him at the helm. So I'm not saying he's going to bring that whole system to Seattle, but that might be something to watch for now that he's gone.
So are you choosing JSN as well?
No, I typically don't have high hopes for rookies in their first season, at least. But I think I'm going to go with Kyle Pitts here. And I say that just because I expect him to have a much better season, but he's probably going to get drafted in like the first 5 rounds next season because everybody's expecting the same thing. Better offense, new quarterback.
See, and then it's going to disappoint you again. I'm just throwing it out there. All right, let's see who is the award winner. T. Higgins at 34.4%. Kyle Pitts is actually last here at 18.2%. We had 154 votes on this one, so T. Higgins is the one that people are still pretty high on. Kyle Pitts, I'm starting to not be high on him, but I respect your opinion, and we'll see what happens next year.
Dedication. I'm a Cornhuskers fan, so I'll stick around for as long as it takes.
You're fair enough. Peekaboo, player drafted mid to late that came out of nowhere award. The 4 candidates, I don't even know if this one's fair. The 4 candidates are Puka Nacua, Rashi Rice, Rashad White, and Dak Prescott. I'm going to kick this one off. I think very clearly Puka Nacua should be the winner here. He did come out of nowhere and was absolutely electric. But if I had to pick somebody else besides Puka, it would probably be Rashad White. He's somebody that I think a lot of people had faded. I think he was like a 9th or 10th round grab and was one of the top running backs this year for fantasy football. So I would take him as my ancillary person who should win if Puka Nacua was not alive and on this planet. Yeti, who are you taking?
Ditto.
Okay, I think are we all in agreement that it's probably?
We're all
I think
on
there's
the same.
Okay,
Yep.
I didn't want to waste anyone's time, and if anybody had opinions, I was there for it. Would you look at that? It's Puka Nacua. Who would have guessed at 81.3% of the votes on 144 votes? Yeah, it's Puka Nacua. I mean, he should win this award very, very handily. The No Way It's Random award. So this player who looks like they played on drugs. Good drugs, bad drugs, whatever the drugs are, this player looked like they may or may not have been on them when they were playing. The 4 candidates are Aiden Hutchinson, Kadarius Toney, Myles Garrett, and Isaiah Pacheco. Scotty, who'd you vote for? Who should win this award?
Yeah, a lot of good ones on this list. I'm going to take the underdog here and go Myles Garrett, though, because I refuse to believe that a human being can be shaped in that way without the help of some pharmaceuticals. And now I'm not making any accusations, but if he got kicked out of the league tomorrow for being all souped up on steroids, nobody on earth would be surprised.
Anything is possible.
That's fair. Yeti, who should win this?
Can I ask why Aiden Hutchinson is on this list? Like, if we're comparing him to Myles Garrett, like, there's no comparison.
You got to have a white guy defensive lineman on there somewhere.
He looks like he's coked up.
It's because he's almost doing blackface every game.
Like, if he's doing lines,
in paint.
Yeah, if he's doing lines before he comes out, like, I could see that.
I can see Dan promoting that behind the scenes.
Oh yeah, him and Dan doing it together. And
yeah,
then, like,
them just
they're holding hands,
and holding each other and doing cocaine.
Yeah, and then they shotgun like a monster, and then they run out into the field. Like, I could see that.
That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah.
So you're not voting Aiden Hutchinson, Yeti?
I think you guys sold me. I'm voting for Aiden.
All right, all right, Alan.
Seems like my kind of guy.
I have to go with Kadarius. There's no way a human brain functions that way, so I'm gonna have to say he's on drugs all the time.
That's fair. I would say Isaiah Pacheco just because he legitimately looks like he has like done bath salts and then you hand him the football and he's just deranged and crazy. I love watching him play football and I think he is a great running back, but he would have my vote. And let's see who won this one. This one's close, actually. It was Kadarius Toney at 48.3% on 201 votes. So, congratulations to Kadarius Toney for probably being on drugs.
Your two-time Super Bowl champ, Kadarius Toney.
Yeah, right. Okay, the Kim Kardashian Award, a.k.a. the Comeback Player of the Year. This is probably my favorite award, and there are some great candidates on this award. We have Matthew Stafford, Damar Hamlin, Raheem Mostert, and Baker Mayfield. Scotty, who are you taking?
It's got to be Damar Hamlin. It's got to be. I am astounded. I'm astounded he didn't win Comeback Player of the Year in the NFL because as good as all these other players were, this dude was dead. He literally came back from the dead. You cannot come back any more than that unless you're Kim Kardashian herself. So it's got to be Damar Hamlin, and that may be the case forever. I think he should get perpetually Comeback Player of the Year until he dies again. Of old age, I should specify.
Okay, I just want to make sure you weren't targeting him.
Yeah, no.
Yeti, who'd you vote for?
Shit. I voted for Baker Mayfield, but I have to say DeMar Hamlin probably would have won if they didn't run that fake punt against the Chiefs that fucking failed miserably.
I agree with that, actually. I do. So-
Imagine if he got the first down. He probably would have won.
he
twice
would have
as
won
hard.
hands
That's-
down.
Yeah, no, he would have won if he got the first down.
That's where McDermott's head was like, we beat you with the dead guy. That's what he was trying to say. You
This
could do
guy's
it.
basically a zombie. Alan, who'd you vote for?
I don't know anymore. Whatever. DeMar, because I think it's so funny. He died. He absolved all of our sins, and then he came back, and he didn't win.
Yeah, I'm going to take Baker Mayfield as well. DeMar, I get it. The argument's there, and it's a very valid one. But I also want to see this person actually do something on the football field, and Baker Mayfield definitely has made a case for himself. So that is who I voted for. And let's see who the majority voted for. Scotty, I just got to be honest. I don't think most people really cared if he died or not. 50% of the people chose Baker Mayfield on 192 votes. So
Tough crowd.
I will say this, though. DeMar Hamlin took second place at 19.8%. So
Well,
I don't think
Baker
anybody
Mayfield had
cares
an
if he
awesome
died.
season. So I
Who would have
don't
thought
blame anyone
DeMar-
for choosing him.
Who would have thought DeMar would have gotten shut out of both Comeback Player of the Year awards?
Yeah,
Not
that's
me.
tough. That is tough. Sorry, DeMar. Appreciate you, though.
Sorry, man.
The Fantasy Cuckold Award. This NFL player is so great that you wouldn't be that mad if they banged your girlfriend, fiance, or wife. The candidates are Sir Nicholas Bosa, Christian McCaffrey, Jalen Hurts, or Travis Kelce. Alan, who'd you vote for?
All at the same time or individually?
I think,
Like,
well,
they
you
have-
only get one vote, but if you're down to just vote 4 times and let your
If
wife
I walked
just...
into a room and all 4 of them were standing there, I'd be like, this makes sense. Like, I get it. I totally get it. So I'm just going to say all of them at once.
Oh my God, you're an animal. All right. Yeti.
I'm gonna have to call a 911 for your wife, I guess.
Yeah.
You never know.
I'm gonna buy into the whole Swiftie narrative here. I'm gonna go with Travis Kelce, man. Maybe he can get some free tickets for my wife.
Do you
All right.
think his anger issues are something you got to be worried about with your wife?
That's what you want in the bedroom. Scott.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if you
to
know
a
this.
degree.
Bump
It,
her
it
around.
goes
That's
quick
fine.
from being kinky to having to call the police. So you gotta be
It's
able
a fine
to judge
line.
that.
It's a
Well,
fine line.
you need to say a word. Scotty, who are you picking?
I think along the same lines as Alan, that any one of these guys, if my wife was like, hey, listen, this guy's been hitting me up, I'd be like, okay, that's fair. I mean, it makes sense. But if I had to choose one, I'd probably go with Nick Bosa because I think he would be the most fun guy to just hang around. I think his
Be like, hey, you just
personality's-
banged my wife. You want to go grab
you're
a
gonna
beer?
hang out
Yeah,
with
go
him
grab a
afterwards?
beer. You want to order some pizza or
Gonna kiss
something?
him
Like,
too?
I'll just be waiting for you guys so we can bro
Yeah.
out after this.
Like, are you guys
Remember
almost
when you were
done?
My wife. Cheers.
I want some wings. Yeah, I'm going to take Christian McCaffrey. I think he is a very good-looking human being. And, I mean, all these guys are, to be honest. But Christian McCaffrey, I think my fiance would be very happy with that. So, let's see what everybody else
That's nice
thinks.
of you.
Yeah. Christian McCaffrey, it's 72.3% on 112 votes. Yep. I mean, I
Makes sense.
don't think there's more analysis that needs to be done here.
Any of them.
Any of them, yeah. This next award is the Charmin Ultra Soft Player of the Year. Probably my favorite award. The candidates for this award are Tyler Lockett, Stephon Diggs, Tony Pollard, and Zach Wilson. I'm going to give my vote to Zach Wilson. I think he is consistently soft. I think he has been soft. And I think for the rest of his NFL career, he will be soft. This is the man who was awarded the starting quarterback position for the Jets after Aaron Rodgers went down. They kind of benched him, and then they said, hey, we're going to start you again. And he said, I don't know if I want to start. So I got to give Zach Wilson some shit, because how do you not want to start as a competitive quarterback in the NFL? That, to me,
Wow.
was
He's
was
playing for the
ridiculous.
Jets. I think his reasoning is perfectly sound.
He thought he was going to be backup the whole year. I get it. When you
Yeah.
think you're on coasting mode and you're like, oh, damn it, I got to work again.
Back up, banging moms. And
It's
now
like
I'm
when you're
starting.
doing a group project and you just are copying all the
Yeah.
work, and then you're expected to do something. That's
Yeah,
kind
the
of what
smartest one
happened to
gets
Zach
sick and then you're stuck and you're like,
You're
oh,
like,
shit,
fuck,
we
dude,
got
now I
to
gotta
figure
do
this
this.
out.
Wilson. Yeah. Alan, who are you voting for?
Mine is Tony Pollard. I had really high hopes for him this fantasy season. After Zeke went away, I thought, hey, he's going to get at least a volume play. He's going to be good. But that man just struggled to find where the end zone was. So he just kind of got bumped around, and I just that sucked. If you picked him up early, like I think a lot of people did, you probably didn't go very far or make the playoffs.
Yeah, he would have been a good one for the Bust Award. Honestly,
Yeah,
everyone was
he
so
would've.
high on it. Several fantasy analysts had him as the RB1 overall going into the season.
That is crazy because that is accurate, and that was very far from the case. Yeti, who you voting for?
Man, it's Stephon Diggs for me because I think he's still standing in Highmark Stadium looking at the scoreboard crying after that game.
Think
I mean,
he's still
been
there right now?
Yeah, I think so.
Shit.
Yeah,
Scotty.
I hate.
Go ahead, Alan.
I was going to say I hate that. I hate when guys like stand around and watch it, like brooding. Like, you're so dumb. Like, that's doing nothing for you. Just get off the field, get off the court, just go away.
It's drama.
Go cry in the locker room.
Yeah.
Just be pissed off like everybody else. You don't have to stand there and look at it.
Just don't cry at the press conference like Dan Campbell.
Yeah, well,
I'm fine. I'm fine.
If you
with
lose the
people
Super
crying.
Bowl, I think you could shed a tear. I would forgive that.
Wow.
every now and
That's
again,
how
it's okay.
courteous of you. Who are you voting for, though?
I'm also voting for Stephon Diggs. I've been on
Okay.
this train for a long time, for many years, that Stephon Diggs is like the epitome of diva wide receivers that is always throwing temper tantrums on the sideline. And guess what? This season, he wasn't very good either. So it's like, yeah, he has a lot of talent, but he has just as much bullshit and baggage that goes along with it. He's always rubbed me the wrong way. I think he is the Charmin Ultrasoft Player of the Year by far.
Okay, let's see who won. And you are correct, Scotty. Stephon Diggs at 49.5% on 184 votes. Second place, Zach Wilson. Third, Tony Pollard. And Tyler Lockett at 6%. Next award is the Give That Bachelor a Rose award. This was the waiver ad of the year. The candidates are Sam Laporta, Rashi Rice, Puka Nakua, and Kyron Williams. I think these are all pretty damn good candidates. They were found on the waiver this year and had starting fantasy value. So all great candidates. I'm assuming Puka Nakua is going to win this one again because he was dominant and a top 10 wide receiver for fantasy football. But let's see who you guys voted for. Alan, we'll start with you.
Good. Okay. Thank you for starting with me. Not Sam Laporta because I drafted him in every league I was in because I'm smart. So
Your big galaxy brain. Leathebrainz, someone said.
Everybody just listen to what I say.
Yep.
Mine would probably be Kyron Williams. I think in a position where it was very depleted from a fantasy standpoint, where like you weren't outside of Christian McCaffrey, you just like weren't getting very much running back production. You were just like crossing your fingers. You could average like maybe 20 points between your two starts. Like, can you just get me there? I think Kyron Williams was probably a significant ad for most where they picked him up and then he turned it up and probably won a lot of fantasy leagues. So that's where I'm at.
Okay. Just for the record, I'm also going to cast my vote for the exact same reasons. So I will take Kyron. Scotty.
I'm also taking Kyron, and it's a little bit of humble pie for me because there were some people, not very many, who were kind of high on him. Obviously, Sean McVay, we've talked about, likes that one running back system for the most part, except for every single time we've ever said that. So I was going into Kyron Williams being a little bit nervous because I'm like, Sean McVay's been a little bit wishy-washy. On top of that, he's a little bit undersized. Could he handle a full workload? So I showed some skepticism, and he proved me wrong. That kid is an absolute beast. So I got to give him the props on this one.
Okay. And Yeti will round it out with you.
Yep, I'm going Kyron as well for all the reasons stated.
All right. Let's get that drum roll, baby. And it is Puka Nakua at 56%. Like I had kind of figured, I think most people are, like I said, no surprise. He's wide receiver 10.
Right.
But the running back position was a lot more difficult this year. So I do think that Kyron, and he took second place at 29% on 198 votes. So I like the Kyron play. I think that he kind of got snubbed there because he was absolutely electric when he was on the field. Guys, you can't pee in pools. I don't know if you knew that, but that is the award
Yes, you
that
can.
we are giving away. It is this player is lukewarm player. They're not great. They're not terrible. They're just there, right? And this award has 4 people that could potentially win this, being Najee Harris, Jalen Waddle, Tony Pollard, and Derek Carr. I'm going to start with this one. Fuck you, Najee Harris. I don't like you. Haven't liked you. Probably will never like you as a player. As a person, I would want to be your best friend. But as a player, I'm out on you. I've always kind of been out on you. I've always kind of thought you were lukewarm. So I am going to give my vote to Najee Harris. And we'll go to Yeti next.
Wow, that felt like an attack more than anything, man.
I just
You good over there?
Yeah, I'm fine. I've been out on Najee Harris. I tell everybody every year, don't draft Najee Harris, and then people still draft Najee Harris. And he did have some value a little bit this year at certain times, but overall, I think he's largely inefficient, and I don't have an interest in owning him in any fantasy categories.
Fair enough. You know, I think for me, this kind of hurts me, but I have to go with my ex here. I got to go with Derek Carr, man. I thought going to New Orleans would be a better situation for him. I thought he would kind of prove me, wrong that he's a good quarterback, but damn, he looked just as average as he did with the Raiders. So
He did. That's fair. Scotty, who you rolling with?
I got to go with Jalen Waddle here. Obviously, he's one of those players that you feel like you could plug in, and any game he has potential to just absolutely go off, especially in this offense that was scoring points left and right for a majority of the season. But Jalen Waddle just never quite pulled it together in a consistent way, and that was very, very disappointing. So I think he's well deserving of this unfortunate award.
Okay. Alan?
I'm going to go Derek Carr. I was really high on him. I always thought that he wasn't necessarily the reason in Vegas that it didn't, or Oakland that it didn't work. And I was sad to see that it was more of the same. It's like, damn it. I really thought I was right on that.
That's interesting.
High hopes. I thought they were going to win the division. I thought he had it all going for him. So,
I mean, that division, if there was any time for him to win any division, that is the right division to be in to win it. I thought he definitely could win the division, but I was never sold on him, and I haven't been. So I just find that interesting that, with as much as we talk about football, like I was kind of on the other side of the camp on this one. And I think you guys, for a lot of there was reasons to believe, right? And unfortunately, I just don't think it worked out for him.
You know what's funny? Just a side note. Before Derek Carr when Derek Carr was with the Raiders, I kept on saying that, it wasn't Derek Carr because the defense sucked or the offensive line sucked. And then I was like, he's going to be better with the Saints because they have a better offensive line and they have a better defense. When this year the Raiders had the better offensive line and the better defense. So sorry, Derek.
Son of a bitch, it is you. All right, well, let's see who won. The person who peed in the pool is Najee Harris at 31.2% of the votes on 205 votes. What's crazy is Jalen Waddle and Tony Pollard both tied for 26.8%. So that's
People
crazy.
are coming around on Najee.
Yeah, they're finally starting to learn. Next award is the Adele Award. You could have had it all. This player who had a good run, but probably should consider retirement. The 4 candidates for this award are Dalvin Cook, Michael Thomas, Zeke, and not a player, Bill Belichick. Billiam himself. Alan, who'd you vote for?
I casted my vote for Dalvin Cook. I think there's a player that kind of fell off really hard, really fast. It was him. Just even when he went to the Jets, I think we're all kind of like, oh, what is this going to do? Like, what is this going to do to the room? And then it was just like he didn't end up finishing there anyways. So he is mine. The one that I'm going to flip really quick before I hand it over is Zeke. I was impressed with him towards the end on like how he actually showed some value. I thought he was going to kind of go the way of Dalvin, but he seemed to pick it up a little bit towards the end. But mine is for Dalvin. I think the writing's on the wall, man. I think your just body cannot sustain.
I'm also going to agree with you, so I will throw my name in that hat. Scotty, who you voting for?
It's got to be Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas went so quickly from one of the best fantasy assets in the game to non-existent and constantly injury prone. You got to remember, Michael Thomas hurt his foot, and I feel for him. That sucks. But Brian Robinson got shot and returned to the field faster than Michael Thomas did after his foot injury. Like, dude, at that point, you got to look around and say, well, I don't think I'm competing anymore. Yeah, so he's easily the pick for me.
Okay, that's a very fair argument. And Yeti.
I'm going to go with Michael Thomas, but what's funny is, to Scotty's point, he was the wide receiver 1 in 2019, and since then he's finished 98th, 953rd, 114th,
Nice.
and 79th. So,
Could you imagine after that season when he finishes wide receiver 1, you buy him for the farm in dynasty football, and then you're just screwed.
Sucks.
That would be terrible. Let's see who won this one. The player who had a good run but should consider retirement, according to all you Brainiacs, is none other than Michael Thomas at 35% of the votes on 160 votes. In second place, we have Dalvin Cook. Third, being somebody who isn't a player, Bill Belichick. And number 4, being Ezekiel Elliott. Okay, last award we have here. This is the Eli Apple Award. We do it every year. It is the player most unlikable player. Okay, so this award is called the Besides Eli Apple Award, and the 4 candidates are Travis Kelce, Eli Apple, Deshaun Watson, and Zach Wilson. Yeti, who'd you vote for?
it's got to be Eli Apple.
I don't.
This
think
is
there's
his
any-
award, man.
It's
It's Eli Apple.
Yeah.
Okay, Scotty.
Yeah, of course it's Eli Apple.
Okay,
Eli
let's see what the Brainiac said. Guys, it was not Eli Apple.
No.
It was Deshaun Watson at
Oh,
49%. But there is hope. Eli Apple took second place with 31% of the votes. So this award is besides Eli Apple, and he still found a way to take second place. So
We call the people who follow us Brainiacs, man. When you see the Besides Eli Apple Award and then Eli Apple is a choice, that's
It's
the
Eli
answer.
Apple.
You
Yeah,
guys are
it's
Brainiacs.
gotta be Eli
Get
Apple.
your heads in the game, damn it. What the hell?
I don't understand that one. But you know what? The Brainiacs have spoken, and we're just here to convey that message. So that's all the time that we have, gentlemen. It has been a wonderful NFL season, and I'm just going to say this. I appreciate each and every one of you guys doing this show twice a week, the grind, the commitment, everything that you guys have done, both with the show and everything else. There's a lot of hard work that goes into this, and I just wanted to give you guys a shout out because I greatly do appreciate this, and I enjoy doing this with you guys. It has been an absolute blast. With all that being said, we're going to take 2 weeks off. We need a break. This has been a very long journey, and we do need to have our recovery. So these next 2 weeks, we're going to take off. We will still be around for social media and all that good stuff, but we will have no show for the next 2 weeks, and then after that, we will be back. So
Straight
don't forget
into
to do all the
Dynasty,
things.
baby.
Thanks, straight, baby. Then we get into that fantasy football and that dynasty era. So last request I have for all you Brainiacs out there listening, hit the subscribe button, man. It does mean a lot. There's a lot of hard work that goes into this show and this production and all the social media and the graphics and all those good things. And it truly does mean the world to us. So just hit the subscribe, whether you're on a podcast platform, YouTube, Twitter, wherever you're at. It truly does mean the world to us. So
Yeah, and
Gentlemen.
shout out to the Brainiacs too.
Yeah.
Brainiacs, these guys this group of people has been listening to our bullshit for years now on a weekly basis. It's absurd. I don't know why you guys haven't decided you have something better to do, but I'm glad you're here. So thank you very much for everything.
absolutely. Anything else? Are we ready to get out of here?
Oh, I do have one last thing. I didn't admit this last year, but I'm going to admit it right now. I have a Kansas City Chiefs hoodie that is magic. This hoodie I only wear in the postseason, and it is undefeated. And I went through the whole postseason last year wearing it, and I was like, oh, this I might have something here. But I was like, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to admit it to anybody because I don't want to jinx it or ruin the magic.
Now it's over.
And then another
gonna burn it.
postseason goes through. But dude, it's a little too small for me. I wore it anyway because it's magic.
You could probably get Juszczyk's wife to just do it up for you so you can keep wearing it for years to come.
There you go.
Kristen, her name's Kristen, I think.
Yeah, she's a fan
Sorry,
of
I don't know
ours.
your name. You do awesome work. Hook me up, please, for the love of God.
All right. And with that, we
R.
Out.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you tune into our new releases every week on your favorite podcast app. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and check out leathebrainz.com for all of your fantasy football needs. And remember, Brainiacs, a championship should be more than a fantasy.